There is something researchers discovered that most people are never told. The experiences you had before the age of 10 didn't just shape your personality, they physically changed the structure of your brain. This is not metaphorically or emotionally. Actually, it is literally. The brain you are walking around with today was built in response to the environment you grew up in. And if that environment was cold, dismissive, unpredictable, or simply absent, your brain adapted. It rewired itself to survive. And that rewiring is still running right now inside you. Stay with me, because what you are about to understand might be the most important thing you learn about yourself. First, let's understand what childhood neglect actually is. Most people think neglect means being left hungry or physically abandoned, but psychologists define neglect far more broadly than that. Emotional neglect is what happens when a child's emotional needs are consistently unmet, when nobody asks how you feel, when your pain is dismissed, when you learn about your inner world is simply not important enough to acknowledge. It doesn't require cruelty. It doesn't require intention. It just requires absence. And that absence leaves a mark on the developing brain that neuroscience can now measure. Here is what science tells us. Harvard researchers studying childhood adversity found that children who experienced emotional neglect showed measurable differences in 3 critical brain regions. The first is the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and impulse control. In people who experience childhood neglect, this region tends to be less developed, less active, and less effective at doing its job, which is why, as an adult, you might find it harder to regulate your emotions, why small things sometimes feel catastrophically large, why you know something logically and still feel it differently in your body. The second region is the amygdala. This is your brain's alarm system. Its job is to detect threats and trigger the survival response. In children who grew up in emotionally unpredictable environments, the amygdala becomes hypersensitive, always scanning, always looking for danger, always ready to fire. And here is the critical part. That alarm system doesn't reset when the danger is gone. It stays calibrated for the environment it was built in. So, as an adult, you might find yourself reacting strongly to things that others barely notice. A shift in someone's tone, a delayed text response, silence in a relationship. These things trigger something deep and automatic. Not because you are overreacting, but because your brain learned a very specific lesson. That silence means something is wrong. That emotional distance means abandonment is coming, that you need to be ready at all times. The third region is the hippocampus. This is the brain's memory and emotional processing center. Research published in the American Journal of Psychiatry found that adults who experienced childhood neglect showed reduced hippocampal volume, meaning this region was physically smaller than in those who had not experienced neglect. And this matters because the hippocampus plays a critical role in context. It helps your brain understand that this situation is different from that one, that this person is not that person, that this moment is safe, even though a similar moment once wasn't. When the hippocampus is compromised, the brain struggles to make these distinctions. Old wounds get activated by new situations. The past bleeds into the present, without you even realizing it. Now here is something important to understand. None of this happened to you because you were weak. None of this is a character flaw. It is biology. A child's brain is the most adaptable organ on Earth. It is designed to learn from its environment and build itself accordingly. If the environment said, emotions are not safe here, the brain built walls around emotion. If the environment said, you cannot depend on anyone, the brain built systems for radical self-sufficiency. If the environment said, you must always be alert, the brain built a nervous system that never fully rests. These were not failures, they were solutions. Brilliant, painful, exhausting solutions to impossible circumstances. But here is what most people don't know. The brain doesn't stop changing at childhood. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's lifelong ability to form new connections, build new pathways, and rewire itself in response to new experiences. What was built in pain can be rebuilt in safety, not overnight, not without effort, but genuinely, completely rebuilt. Research from the University of California found that consistent therapeutic relationships, mindfulness practices, and emotionally corrective experiences can measurably change the structure and function of the brain. Even in adulthood, the prefrontal cortex can strengthen, the amygdala can recalibrate, the hippocampus can grow. Your brain is not fixed. Your story is not finished. So what does this mean for you practically? It means that the way you react to conflict is not a personality flaw. It means that the way you struggle to trust people is not weakness. It means that the way you feel emotions so intensely, or sometimes feel nothing at all, is not you being broken. It is your brain doing exactly what it learned to do in an environment that required it. And understanding that changes everything. Because you cannot heal what you believe is simply who you are, but you can heal what you understand is what happened to you. The neglect was not your fault. The rewiring was not your fault. But the rebuilding, that gets to be yours, not as punishment, not as burden, but as the most profound act of self-understanding you will ever undertake. Your brain changed once in response to pain. It can change again in response to healing. And this time, you get to choose the environment. You get to choose the relationships. You get to choose what your brain learns next. The childhood you had does not have to be the brain you keep.